In this module, I want to give just a very quick overview of corporate bonds, municipal bonds, and mortgage-backed securities. My purpose here is just to provide, again, a brief overview. These three bond types are the major types of risky or bonds that have default out there. So we just want to provide a little bit of definition for what those are. A very brief review of those three types is also in our last three readings for this week: corporate bond, municipal bonds, and mortgage-backed securities. This comes from the PIMCO Education Center, so they're very quick reads. Look at them: corporate, municipal, and mortgage-backed securities. As you would expect, corporate bonds provide funding for corporations. They're longer term. Typically, they start with maturities of over a year. As the same with Treasury notes, there are bonds and notes, and the differentiation between the two is the length of time that exists. Notes go from 1 to 10 years, bonds go for more than that. The second sort of big differentiation we make in corporate bonds is investment grade, which would be higher quality, versus speculative grade. Here, speculative grade has higher risk. Higher risk would have higher yields. So the difference here: investment grade will have lower risk, lower yields. Speculative grade will have higher risk and higher yields. So in the bond market, if you want higher yields, you're going to have to take higher risk. Municipal bonds provide funding for state and local governments and their agencies. And their agencies might be a waste management division or a water district or something of that nature. So municipal bonds provide funding for municipalities. They're generally divided into general obligation, or those that just provide for the general operation of that entity, or revenue bonds, which are backed by specific taxes. Another sort of municipal entity would be a school district. So a school district could offer here a bond that could be supported by a tax to pay off that bond. So that would be a revenue bond example. Municipal bonds are often tax exempt, so that means is that you won't have to pay taxes on the proceeds from municipal bonds. That's usually a federal tax exemption, and state and local exemptions may vary, and that will often vary by the state that you live in. For example, if you live in Illinois, Illinois bonds will be tax exempt, whereas other states municipal bonds will not. So it depends on where you live. Tax exempt causes that bonds, or these yields on municipal bonds, to have lower. You don't have to have as high as yield as this as on corporate bonds to have the same rate of return. So you can get a lower yielding bond. That makes it easier for the municipalities to fund operations. The final group of bonds is mortgage-backed securities, and these provide an interest in a group of mortgages. They are traded like securities, so you will buy. So the way this would work is that you would have a group of bonds. The group of bonds would be put together. You would buy an interest in that group of bonds, and that interest would pay you back when the mortgage is paid you back. These mortgage-backed securities are traded like securities, and they include agency debt such as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Those are fairly famous. Those are mortgage-backed securities that do mortgages, and they were a prime cause of mortgage-backed securities. Were one of the issues in the last financial crisis. The mortgage-backed securities is a specific case of a more general case of asset-backed securities. So you could have a variety of different assets that are asset-backed securities, with mortgages being one example. Finally here, I just provided a brief, quick overview of municipal bonds, corporate bonds, and mortgage-backed securities. All of these will have default risk, and they will vary by the specific corporation, specific municipality, and specific mortgage-backed security. So they will vary across organizations within that type. So you really have to do a credit analysis on each individual bond.